our society still has massive incentive problems. I think the worst, frankly, are still in the legacy financial systems. To be honest, I think one of them right now is in venture capital. Right now, if you look at the funding of innovation, which is what venture capital does, and you look at, take an example is like, take the boom in the altcoins, right? Which essentially, the altcoins were funded very differently than the birth of Bitcoin. These are largely funded by VCs who are playing a marketing game with their limited partners, and it's no joke that they have an incentive to essentially, the VCs have access to huge amounts of institutional capital, and they pump money into these startups, and then essentially exit right before or after the IPO. Maybe it's a coin, maybe it's an IPO, and essentially the retail community, investor community is holding the bag. And it's all, to me, I mean, as an academic, I can say this since I don't have my own skin in the game, but it's almost at a level of corruption that this exists to this day, where these highly centralized gatekeepers, these VCs, have enormous amounts of power and influence in the course of innovation, in terms of what products and technologies people work on and what they fund, what young people do for a living. Because the reality is that everyone follows incentives, and so individuals, I would say once a week, I get an email from a student who wants to create a new cryptocurrency because they know that there's a reward for this in the market. They see what VCs are funding, and the VCs are simply, they're funding these projects. They're playing their pump and dump game, and they get a big return from their LPs, and they go on to the next thing. So it's not as funny a story. I think it's a real problem in our society, and we need, at some level, as the Bitcoin community, I think needs to call this out for what it is, because it does run against some of the ethos of our community here.
Do you think that something like Bitcoin, or in this case Bitcoin, can actually start to fix these issues, or do you feel like that's kind of a pipe dream, and that we will see these types of broken incentive structures built in any new system, regardless?
That is really the $1 trillion question, and it's something that I do think about a lot. Doesn't have an easy answer, so it's got multiple phases to it. Let me try to answer it this way. First of all, Bitcoin is, it has one additional benefit of that: we can just toss out the old system and rebuild anew. So that itself will have value, because you could say any human social science system over time gets corrupted and captured. Would this happen on Bitcoin? So the reality, so in this sense, I don't think it's given that Bitcoin would be immune 100% to some of the problems with the legacy financial system today, without some work, I think, from the Bitcoin community on our principles. And I think the principles are actually the principles are, to me, the most important part of Bitcoin are the principles, and it's the only technology that really has any principles. And I think it's important for us to consistently address, acknowledge, celebrate, and discuss those principles, much more than I think it is to have conversations about what the price of Bitcoin is, which is where most of the conversation around Bitcoin is today. That's part of the reason why my lab, I focus a lot on educating students about the ideas behind Bitcoin. What were some of the design choices that went into this? Because in the future Bitcoin economy, there will also be future design choices that have to be made. And even if the foundation is strong, without knowledge of what those design choices were and the fundamental principles, you are at risk of creating another legacy financial system in the future. So that's why I think on the education side, it's very important for us to understand Bitcoin is much more than just a technology. It really is a new way of thinking, and we need to start advocating and explaining some of these principles of decentralization and sovereignty and individual rights, and transparency that need to be embedded inside of the long-term future. I would say I'm not comfortable saying that without doing anything, that the Bitcoin economy will be completely perfect. So I think we need to work